The twin suns of planet Varelia rose slowly over silver mountains, painting the sky with pink and violet light. The capital city, Ethra, shimmered like a crystal garden. Tall glass towers reflected the morning glow, and long ribbons of light floated across the streets, marking the start of another royal day. Inside the great palace, servants moved quietly through marble halls. The air smelled of flowers and cool metal. Every mirror surface shone bright, except one, a single window hidden behind a curtain. Behind it, Princess Lasara Nixari sat alone. She was a princess of a noble race, known for perfect beauty, silver skin, glowing hair, and flawless symmetry. But Lasara had been born different. Her hair had uneven brightness. Her skin carried faint streaks that never reflected light the same way. Among her people, such small things were seen as flaws. She had learned long ago that eyes always searched for them, so she hid. She wore light veils of white silk whenever she appeared in public. Even at her coronation ceremonies, she spoke from behind that thin curtain of fabric. Many thought she was proud or cold. The truth was much simpler. She was afraid of their stares. That morning, her attendant, Mira, entered quietly. "Your Highness," she said softly, "the delegation from Earth has arrived. The Queen requests your presence in the Grand Hall." Lasara looked up, nervous. "Humans," she whispered. "The ones with soft faces and strange eyes." "Yes," Myra said, smiling. "They come for peace and trade. They say their people value honesty more than beauty." Lasara almost laughed, though it sounded more like a sigh. "Then they are rare beings indeed." She stood, adjusting her long silver robe and drawing her veil lower over her face. In the mirror she saw her own eyes, pale, violet, uncertain but deep. For a moment she thought of removing the veil. Then she remembered the last time she had tried. The court had whispered for days. When she entered the Grand Hall, the sound of foreign voices filled the air. The humans had brought bright machines, sleek uniforms, and cheerful energy. They were shorter than most Varelians, but looked stronger somehow. Shaped by gravity and hard work, rather than perfect design, the leader of the human delegation stepped forward. Captain Ryan Hale, a tall man with short dark hair and clear blue eyes. His uniform was simple, and his smile reached all the way to his eyes. He bowed slightly before the Queen and spoke in a firm but kind voice. "On behalf of the Human Federation, I bring greetings and respect," he said. "We hope this visit will mark friendship between our worlds." The Queen smiled politely, though formality covered her tone. "We share that hope, Captain Hale, my daughter, Princess Lasara. We'll observe the technical exchange between our engineers and your team." Lasara bowed slightly but did not speak. Ryan noticed the soft movement of her veil as she turned away. He wondered why a royal princess hid her face. Later that day, as the humans examined the palace's energy core, Lasara followed silently behind them. She kept her distance, watching as Ryan worked with confidence and curiosity. He asked questions no one else dared to ask, touching the machines gently as though they were alive. "Your systems are beautiful," he said to one of the royal engineers. "They almost sing when they power up." Lasara found herself smiling behind her veil. No one had ever described cold machines as beautiful. After the inspection, Ryan walked up the marble corridor toward the observation balcony. Lasara followed quietly, unsure why. He stopped and looked out over the shining city. "Do you ever get tired of perfect things?" he asked without turning. Lasara froze. "What do you mean?" Ryan smiled faintly. "Everything here is flawless. The buildings, the colors, even the air feels designed. But perfection feels lonely sometimes." She hesitated before answering. "We are taught that perfection brings peace, but I find peace hard to find." Ryan turned toward her. "Then we share something." For a moment, his eyes met the thin outline of her face behind the veil. Lasara looked away quickly, pretending to adjust her robe. Her heart beat faster. That evening, the Queen invited the delegation to a ceremonial dinner. Lasara sat quietly at the far end of the table, watching Ryan laugh with the other humans. His laughter sounded real, not trained, not practiced. It filled the hall like sunlight. Halfway through the meal, the palace lights flickered. The hum of the great energy core below suddenly stopped. The hall grew dim. Alarms echoed in the distance. Engineers rushed to their stations. The queen stood, calm but worried. "A core disruption?" she said sharply. One of the guards answered, "Yes, Your Majesty. Emergency power is failing." Before anyone could react, Ryan was already moving. "I can help," he said. "I've studied similar systems." The queen hesitated. "You, a human." "With your engineers," he added quickly. "I won't touch anything without permission." Lysara felt something stir inside her, a mix of fear and admiration. Without thinking, she followed him as he ran toward the lower chambers. The energy core was deep beneath the palace, surrounded by tall pillars of glowing crystal. The heat was rising fast, and sparks danced along the conduits. Afraid to make a mistake, Ryan dropped to one knee beside a control panel. "The secondary regulator's stuck," he said. "We need to vent pressure manually." The chief engineer hesitated. "That could overload the lower lines. Not if we balance it here," Ryan replied, pointing. "Someone needs to monitor the flow." "Princess, can you read this output?" Lysara blinked. "You wish me to help?" "You're already here," he said, smiling. "And you seem smarter than anyone else in the room." She stepped closer, scanning the display through the soft light. "Yes, the pattern is unstable. It needs symmetry," Ryan nodded. "Then let's make it symmetrical." They worked side by side. He moved quickly, his hands steady even as sparks flew. She adjusted the flow readings, trying not to think about how close he was standing. His shoulder brushed her arm once. Warm, solid, human. Suddenly a loud pop echoed through the chamber. A cable snapped loose, releasing a burst of energy. Lysara cried out as the light flared. Before she could move, Ryan grabbed her, pulling her down behind the console. The blast struck his arm instead of her face. He grunted but did not shout. The smell of burned metal filled the air. Lysara looked at him in shock. "You're hurt." He just smiled through the pain. "Just a little singed. I've had worse fixing coffee machines." She couldn't help it. A small laugh escaped her lips. It was the first laugh she had made in weeks. Together they finished stabilizing the system. The lights returned, humming steadily again. The alarms stopped. The queen's voice came through the intercom, full of relief. "The core is stable. All units stand down." Ryan sat back, breathing hard. Lysara looked at his injured arm. "You risked yourself," she said softly. "For me?" He shrugged lightly. "You were closer to the blast. It was instinct." "No one ever calls it instinct here," she murmured. "We call it error." He smiled again, and she realized that every time he smiled, the air felt warmer. "Then maybe a little error is good for this place?" he said. She found herself studying his face, small scars, uneven stubble, tired eyes that somehow looked alive. He was not flawless like her people. There was something about him that felt strong and safe. Ryan noticed her gaze and tilted his head. "You're still hiding under that veil," he said softly. "You can drop it if you want. I'd rather see who I'm talking to." Lysara's heart jumped. "No, you would not like what you see. I'll take my chances." She turned away. "Humans may find beauty in chaos, but my face is not what you think." He leaned back, resting his arm. "Maybe, but I've seen ugly things. Wars, greed, lies. I can promise you're none of those." For the first time, she didn't know what to say. They sat there for a long moment, surrounded by the quiet hum of machines. When Ryan finally stood to leave, he paused. "You know, Princess," he said with that easy smile, "most people hide behind masks even when they're not wearing one." She watched him walk away, his footsteps fading into the echo of the corridor. That night, Lysara couldn't sleep. She stood on her balcony, staring at the twin moons. The city glowed beneath her, peaceful again. Yet her heart was not calm. She thought of his smile, his burned arm, the way he had spoken without judgment. In her whole life, no one had ever looked at her without comparing her to perfection. No one had ever risked something for her. The next morning, She found herself walking toward the human quarters before sunrise. She told herself it was only to check on his injury. But her hands trembled slightly as she reached his door. The guard at the door nodded. "Captain Hale is awake, Your Highness." Inside, Ryan was sitting near a small medical device, his arm bandaged. He looked surprised, but pleased to see her. "Princess," he said warmly, "did we save the palace or blow it up?" She smiled behind the veil. "The palace stands, thanks to you," he grinned. "Then my luck hasn't run out yet." She stepped closer, unsure how to start. "You could have died yesterday," she said quietly. "Why did you help me?" Ryan looked at her with simple honesty. "Because you were there." Lasara stared at him, confused. "That is not reason enough." "It's reason enough for a human," he said. "Sometimes helping someone is what makes us human at all." His words lingered in her mind. She wanted to tell him how strange that sounded, and yet how right it felt. When she left his room, she noticed that some servants stared, whispering as she passed. But for the first time, she didn't care. Days passed. The humans continue. When the human ship left orbit, the skies of Varelia felt strangely quiet. The silver clouds hung low. Princess Lasara found herself standing often on the palace balcony, looking toward the stars. She told herself it was only curiosity about human technology. But deep down, she knew the truth. She missed Captain Ryan Hale. His smile, his way of speaking. His strange jokes that made no sense to her. All of it stayed in her mind. Like music that refused to fade. For a week, she tried to return to her royal duties. She attended council meetings, greeted nobles, and listened to endless reports about energy levels, trade, and protocol. Yet during every pause, her mind drifted back to him. One evening, as she reviewed Alliance documents, Mira entered her chamber with worried eyes. "Your Highness, there is news. A message from the human fleet." Lasara looked up quickly. "Is Captain Hale safe?" Mira smiled. "Yes, but their shuttle suffered a small engine failure. They landed on the outer ridge for repairs. The Queen has offered assistance." Lasara rose at once. "I will go." Mira hesitated. "The Queen said she would send engineers." "I am an engineer too," Lasara said firmly. "And he saved our lives once. It is my duty to make sure he returns safely." Within an hour, she was on a royal cruiser heading toward the ridge. The desert outside the city was silent and silver under twin moons. The ship landed near a narrow canyon where the human shuttle rested like a wounded bird. Ryan stood outside with a few crew members, trying to adjust a damaged stabilizer. When he saw Lasara step down from her cruiser, his surprised face turned to a bright smile. "Princess," he called, "did you miss our broken machinery?" She felt her heart lighten. "It seems your kind brings trouble wherever you go," he laughed softly. "Then it's good we have friends to fix it." She joined them, kneeling beside the engine. Together, they worked under the cool night sky. As she passed him tools, she noticed the burn on his arm had healed into a faint scar. "You should have let the healers finish the treatment," she said gently. He shrugged. "I like scars. They remind me that I lived through something worth remembering." Lasara looked at her own hand, its faint markings glinting in moonlight. "My people call marks like these flaws." "Then your people are missing half the story," Ryan replied. "Flaws are proof that life touched you." For a moment, neither spoke. The stars shone above them, reflected faintly on her silver skin. After a while, the engine came back to life. The human crew cheered quietly. Ryan turned to her and said, "You make saving the day a habit, don't you?" She smiled. "Perhaps I learned it from you." Before he could answer, a sharp tremor shook the ground. Rocks fell from the canyon walls. The crew shouted as cracks opened in the sand. "Seismic shift." Someone cried. Ryan grabbed Lasara's hand and pulled her toward the shuttle. "Move." The ground split behind them. Dust rose like a storm. A huge pillar of stone crashed where they had been standing moments before. They ran until they reached the flat clearing beyond the ridge. Breathing hard, Ryan looked back. "That was close," Lasara nodded, shaken. The ridge wasn't supposed to be unstable. He glanced at her hand still in his. You okay? She followed his eyes and slowly pulled her hand free, blushing under her veil. I'm fine. The quake ended soon after, but the ridge's communication tower was destroyed. They were stranded for the night until a new beacon could be built. The human crew set up small shelters, while Lysara sent word through her. Cruiser's limited signal. Ryan approached her tent later, carrying a small metal flask. Warm drink, he said with a grin. Human medicine for bad days. She took it politely, tasting it. It was sweet, almost like sunlight melted into water. It's pleasant. He sat beside her on a smooth rock. You know, Princess, your world looks peaceful, but it hides a lot of storms. She turned to him. Every world does. Even yours, I think. He nodded slowly. Maybe that's why we came here, to find people who understand that peace isn't the same as perfection. The words settled deep inside her heart. She looked at him, the human who had no reason to protect her, no gain to chase, yet kept showing kindness as if it was his nature. Ryan, she said quietly, why do humans smile so often? Even in danger, he chuckled. Because sometimes smiling is the only thing left to do. It keeps the fear small. She thought about that. Then you must be very brave. Lass, he looked at her through the firelight. No, I just keep meeting people who deserve a reason to smile back. Their eyes met, and for a long time neither looked away. The next morning the rescue ships arrived. Lysara returned to the palace, but everything inside her felt different. She no longer hid in her room. She began walking the gardens without her veil in the early dawn when no one watched. She wanted to feel the wind on her face. Whispers grew in the court. The flawed princess behaved strangely. Yet she did not care anymore. When the human fleet returned to complete the alliance ceremony, Ryan came again to the palace. This time Lysara greeted him in the open hall, veil still lowered but eyes steady. Welcome back, Captain Hale, she said. He bowed. It's good to see you again, Princess Lysara. The Queen announced that the signing of the treaty would take place in 3 days. But peace never came easily. That night, a secret group of Varelian extremists broke into the palace power hub. They believed joining with humans would destroy their purity. Their plan was to overload the core and blame the humans. When alarms sounded again, Lysara was in the garden. She rushed to the control chamber and found chaos, guards shouting, smoke rising, lights flickering red. Ryan was already there helping the engineers. They're trying to melt the core. He shouted. Lysara's heart pounded. If it goes critical, the whole city will fall. He pointed to the central platform. The only way to stop it is manual override. But someone has to stay in the chamber to guide the pressure balance. She looked at him. Then I'll do it. Ryan shook his head. No. You'll be trapped. So will you if you stay? He smiled faintly. I'm not a princess. I'm expendable. She stepped closer, her voice trembling but firm. To me, you are not. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Then, without another word, they both ran to the core. The air burned with static. Energy arcs flashed across the walls. Together they began stabilizing the flow, just as they had done once before. Sparks showered around them. Ryan shouted above the noise, You take the east conduit. I'll handle the vents. Lysara moved quickly, her fingers flying over the controls. Pressure rising. She warned. Hold it steady. He replied. An explosion shook the floor. Ryan stumbled, his side grazed by a burst of heat. Lysara caught his arm, pulling him back. You're hurt again? He smiled, even in pain. You really need safer workplaces, Princess. Despite the danger, she laughed, a desperate, trembling laugh that felt alive. They managed to reroute the final line. The lights steadied. The roaring noise faded. The core cooled slowly until the readings turned green. They collapsed beside the console, breathing hard. For a long moment, the only sound was the low hum of returning stability. Ryan leaned back, eyes closed. That was almost fun. Lysara turned toward him, her veil torn and half-burned. Her face was visible now, uneven silver tone, faint scars from energy light. She froze, realizing it. He opened his eyes, looked at her face fully for the first time, and smiled softly. "There you are." She looked away quickly. "You should not look at me. I am not like the others." He reached out gently, his voice calm. "I've seen perfect statues that felt empty. You're real. That's worth more." Tears filled her eyes, not of sadness, but of release. "Why call me gorgeous," she whispered, "when I'm ugly?" Ryan's reply was simple, steady. "Because you don't see yourself the way I do. And because it's true," she shook her head. "My people will never believe that. And let them learn," he said. "Let them see what I see." Before she could answer, guards and engineers entered, cheering that the danger was over. They helped Ryan stand and bowed deeply to Lysera. For the first time, she didn't hide her face. The queen arrived soon after, her eyes wide. "Lysera, your veil." Lysera straightened her shoulders. "Mother, I am done hiding." The queen looked at her daughter, scarred, glowing faintly in uneven light, and felt something shift inside her. There was strength, not shame, in that face. When the treaty ceremony began the next day, Stora stood beside Ryan. Hundreds of citizens and diplomats filled the hall. Holographic banners shimmered with symbols of both worlds. The queen addressed the gathering. "Today, we unite to races. We welcome the Federation of Humanity into alliance with the Nixori people." As applause echoed, Lysora stepped forward unexpectedly. The hall fell silent. She removed her veil completely, letting it fall to the floor. Gasps rose around the room. "This is who I am," she said clearly. "For years I believed I was broken because my light was different. But I have learned that difference is not ugliness. It is life." Her eyes met Ryan's. "A human showed me that truth." Ryan smiled quietly, hands folded behind his back. Lysara continued. "Let this treaty not be only between our governments, but between hearts, between what we call perfect and what we call real." When she finished, silence held for a breath. Then the queen began to clap. The nobles followed, and soon the hall thundered with applause. The alliance was signed that day. But history remembered it for another reason, the moment when an alien princess stood barefaced beside a human and changed how her people saw beauty forever.